Well, disappointment turns to excitement as Vandy prepares for their road trip to Missouri.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we look at the most important factors in the upcoming matchup with Mizzou. Clark Lee will need to find answers for Brady Cook and Luther Burden. Offensively, Diego Pavia will have to lead this offense as they try to regain their form and identity. But most importantly, the good news is this team is now refocused. They're excited to start SEC play. So Clark Lee did his weekly address with the press, and he did his press conference, and he said a lot of things and not a whole lot about Missouri. I think a lot of it was focused on the debacle that happened last Saturday, the officiating, injuries, things like that. Just kind of like what broke down everything that happened, and so. Later on in the press conference, he came out with this quote right here. Okay. And I think it's going to help everybody kind of turn the page, or at least for now. Because, like I said in previous episodes, it's important for this team to regain their focus and direct their attention towards something else. Here's that something else. He said, these guys are excited. They're excited to play a good SEC team on the road, and it will be challenging. That's why it's important to turn the page. Or that's why turning the page is so important from a week ago and getting refocused. And that was him talking about Missouri. But this quote's important because it really kind of sheds light on where the team's mindset was a week ago. At this time last week, they were feeling themselves a little bit overconfident, wasn't taking things too seriously, thought they could just waltz out there and beat Georgia State because they're an SEC team. Well, they learned the hard way that they can't do that. So now, with that lesson being learned, and Clark Lee did mention that he wishes that, and this is an obvious statement, but he wishes that that lesson would have been learned with a win and not with the pain of a loss in that scenario. But, I think it's important for these guys to kind of get refocused. I think mindset-wise, I think it'll do a lot of good for their competitive toughness and the culture around the team and around the university for them to just kind of get refocused, move on, and forget about Georgia State. And that's, I know it's easier said than done, but it's important for them to kind of get refocused and get excited because, as Diego Pavia said, this is why he came to Vanderbilt, to play in SEC games. And this is a big test as Missouri is looking forward to breaking into the college football playoff and making noise. They have a couple of playmakers. They have a great run game. They have all kind of things. They're electric. Their team is very well-rounded offensively, defensively, and everything. So this is going to be a tough test, and I think the guys are excited about that. And truthfully, I think the opponent, the road opponent last week, didn't give them much to think about, or they felt like it didn't give them much to think about. And so they took it lightly now, and here we are. So I think what also helps is that, they have a lot to focus on. They have a lot game plan wise, offensively, a lot game plan wise, defensively, to really kind of keep their attention offensively. Right. If you watch, and this is what they need to focus on. This is how they need to attack Missouri, because in watching that Boston College game, that's the only Missouri game that I've seen so far. But watching that Boston College game, Missouri defensively, they're tough. They're a havoc-style defense. They get after you. They shoot gaps. They're aggressive. They're going to get pressure on Pavia. Their goal is to get the quarterback off his spot, especially with an athletic running quarterback that is very elusive and hard to tackle. Castellanos was that guy last week for Boston College. They what they did really well against Castellanos is immediately got pressure in his face and immediately got him off his spot, immediately got him on the run. And when he got on the run, he tried to throw the ball downfield. He threw off platform. And that's one thing that we're noticing Castellanos was not very good at for Boston College, was throwing off platform, because he threw, I think, 2 or 3 interceptions, if I remember correctly. But this is an important matchup for this offense, because they have to, if they're going to want to have any chance of moving the ball, Pavia is going to have to get in the rhythm in the throwing game. They're going to have to get things done in the option game. So how do they do it? That's the golden question. How do they do it? Okay. Well, their identity is what? Run game. Okay. What kind of run game? Option run game, right? So they're a modern option run team. So in order to be that, they have to create space for themselves to be able to run that option. There was a couple times where I think Boston College, or there were a few times where Boston College had tried that. And I think formationally, they didn't do things quite right. They put formation into the boundary. They did things where they compressed the formation a little too much. And I think when you get a lot of bodies in the box for Missouri, they're able to play more games up front. Whereas if you spread them out, they kind of have to define their rush lanes, and they have to define what gaps they're responsible for. But sometimes the tighter the formation is not always the better, and they're able to disguise a little bit what they're doing up front. So to attack that, what Vandy's going to have to do is force the tempo, right? They're going to have to force Missouri to respond to them, not the other way around. Okay. And in doing so, formations, formations to where you get guys in space, formations to where, you can easily make it easier, not easily, but easier to diagnose what they're going to be doing up front. And likewise in the secondary. All right. Pre-snap motions, shifts, things like that. They're going to have to utilize that even more. And I thought the game plan was against Virginia Tech was brilliant. Against Alcorn, it was just, hey, let's just do our thing. Let's do our thing. But against Virginia Tech, I thought it was brilliant. I thought they did a lot of great things with pre-snap movement. I thought they did a lot of things to disguise different tendencies, to where they did multiple things out of the same look and out of the same motions, and was very deceptive that way. So for them to have success moving the ball on Missouri, they're going to have to be a little bit more deceptive. They're going to have to be able to get them moving, get them on their heels. If they can get them on their heels, they can capitalize on it. They can get some chunk plays, and then they can get the ball moving down the field. Okay. And then the pass game will open up as Missouri's trying to get some things going. One of the things I noticed, though, speaking of passing game, okay, one of the things I noticed was this. Boston College was able to hit a bunch of big plays over the top. And a lot of that was due to the run game. A lot of that was due to Missouri being super aggressive. Sometimes when you're a hyper-aggressive team, especially on defense, you leave yourself open in some scenarios to where if you don't get home on your pressure, you're susceptible to the deep ball. You leave a lot of one-on-one matchups. You leave yourself kind of exposed. And so Boston College was able to take advantage of that a couple of times. They were able to play action, get Castellanos on the move, and they were able to leak a tight end or crack, or do like a crack switch, crack seam type scenario where they had the receiver act like he was going to crack, and then he ran up the seam, and they were able to dump it to him for big yardage. So this is something that I know they've been watching, and I know that they're kind of like, ooh, okay, we got some things on the horizon here. I know Jerry Kill and Tim Beck are in there trying to devise a game plan. I don't know. And then on that same token, I don't know what the thinking was behind the Georgia State game plan. They act like Missouri's not going to see every single game they've played in. So I don't know if they were trying to hide something. I think that's a stupid idea, but execution wise, they should be a little bit better. And I think it's going to come back to Diego Pavia trying to get back to, being more confident, being able to lead. I don't know what happened to him like in the Georgia State game. He just wasn't himself. and he wasn't able to pull that Pavia magic. So it's important for Vandy to be able to get into a situation where they're comfortable moving the ball. So pre-snap motions, options, things like that, hitting deep balls, that's going to be something that is going to have to be a staple. And we'll talk more about that here next. All right, talking about FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, that is. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. All right, we're also presented by Game Time. Did you know Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier? Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. All right. I was looking through this for a Nashville Sounds game. It was super, super easy. It took me right to the deals, and I was able to get a great deals on some great seats. So Game Time Picks, its curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. They have all-in pricing. So if you toggle this feature on, you have to toggle it on, or it's not going to show you. But it shows you the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. So that's amazing, right? You have to you have to turn this on. It's not automatic. All right, seat views. This is my favorite. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. No other app does that. So you have the lowest ticket price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Oh. All right, welcome back. It is the Locked On Vandy podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are here. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen. All right, there's a roundtable coming up later on this week. I'm sure they're going to wax poetically about Toledo and Mississippi State, Vandy and Georgia State. Yeah, not good on that front, but behind us. It's in the rear view now. So just to recap, right? We talked about Clark Lee and how he's saying the team's excited, they're refocused, and there is no more lack of focus. There's no more, kind of lackadaisical overconfidence, because you can't really be overconfident playing against Missouri, right? So, but they're excited about this matchup, and I think they're excited to kind of get back to doing what they do well. So game plan wise, man, I think just for the mindset against Missouri is you have to just fall back into your identity. I think that's something that they got away from against Georgia State, where they weren't as aggressive on in any of the three phases. It just didn't seem like they were really all that focused and wanted to be there. They played hard, but it just seems like the focus was gone. And I think that, sometimes that comes across as lackadaisical and not caring and not playing with passion. Well, they were just kind of lackadaisical, focused, didn't want to be there really, thought they should, and then just kind of got woken up, and it was probably a little too late, or it was too late, because the everything was already set in motion. So offensively, right? So getting back to, how, so what's next, right? Well, obviously Missouri is on deck. So you have no time to wallow, and hopefully they're not wallowing. Hopefully they're getting excited to play Missouri. But the key, I think, to Missouri, again, offensively, is pre-snap movement and formations. I think you've got to set yourself up in a position to be able to take advantage of space. And you have to create that space for yourself because Missouri is not going to give it to you. And they're fast enough to cover it if you can't create enough of it to get yourself in a good situation. So this is going to be an important game for Diego Pavia. If he can get the offense back on track, they do have a chance to salvage this into a decent season. If not, it's going to be a long one on Weston. I'm just going to tell you to go ahead and buckle up if that's the case. So Diego Pavia is going to have to put his leadership hat back on, and they're going to have to get after it offensively. And they're going to have to get back to being able to run the option. They're going to have to get back to being able to throw RPOs, which they were okay at. They're going to have to get good at that. They have to get good at tempo. They have to be able to control that, and they have to be hyper aggressive. Like Vandy, their mindset. This is overall, but and I'm going to transition to defense here in a second because I think there's a little bit more at stake there, and I wanted to take some time on that. But I think just the overall mindset, you have to flip over to being hyper aggressive. Because if they're not, they're going to, they're not. Vandy's not talented enough. We all know that. They're not talented enough to play conservatively at all. They're not talented enough to play undisciplined. They're not talented enough to not play a clean game where they're taking negative plays or giving up chunk yardage or giving up chunk yardage in any direction. They're not good enough to give up safeties on a kickoff. They're not good enough to squander field position. They're just not. And so they're going to have to take advantage of those things. And they can't do that if they're not focused. They can't do that if they don't have any sort of confidence or belief. So they heard the noise last week. They're hearing the noise again. And just as much last week as it is this week, they're going to have to block all that out. And let's get after it, okay? Because defensively, all right, they're going to have their hands full because there's not a whole lot more explosive teams in the SEC or in the country for that matter than Missouri. You watch them play, it's a clinic. It's an offensive clinic. I'm going to be honest here. This is one of the more explosive offenses that I've seen, man. As an offensive play caller and as a retired high school football coach, I stepped away, and in large part to kind of focus right here on growing this. But from that perspective, I'm loving what I see out of Missouri. From a perspective of whether I think Vandy's going to have a chance, that just doesn't look too hot. All right, but they do have a chance, okay? Because Boston College did get some stops. Boston College was able to create some havoc a little bit, and Boston College was able to be in this game. Like they were well within reach to win this game. Offensively, they gave the ball away too much and they squandered field position and they did things offensively that didn't help them. So if Vandy can play a clean game from an offensive perspective, there is a chance. There is a way for them to stay in this game and possibly even go and get the W, right? There is a way. It's a very difficult, long, winding road full of obstacles. But there is a road, okay? Whereas in years past, there wasn't always a road. It was just, okay, take your L and detour and keep going. There is a road, and they can travel down it. It's going to be very tumultuous, be very bumpy, very obstacle-laden, but there is a road for success here, okay? Now, for Vandy, defensively, they're going to have to there's no other way to put it. Brady Cook and Luther Burden are one of the better quarterback wide receiver duos out there. As a number one receiver, Luther Burden is arguably the best in the country. Doesn't help Vandy's cause that their number two guy could be a number one guy anywhere else, and that's Theo Wease. They also have Noel as the running back. He runs really hard. They really like to feature the stretch run game, so they're going to have to. Those are some of the personnel things that they're going to have to contend with. Those are weapons that Missouri has that they can utilize in very explosive fashion. And this is going to be a tough road, okay? And I can't understate that anymore. It's going to be a tough road. I got to be honest. It's not going to be easy, okay? But there is a way. And There's a way to limit those 3. There is a way to be able to do that. But you know what? I'm going to tell you about that next. Hello, Vandy fans. Have you heard about Roy? No, I'm not talking about my best friend Roy. I'm talking about Return on You, right? Roy. It's an abbreviation. It's an acronym. And it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL just like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. Roy changes the NIL game for fans. You have exclusive content access. So when fans contribute to a successful campaign, they receive access to exclusive content from the athletes, such as their announcement decision, behind-the-scenes footage, and other personal reflections, all of which are available only to the fans who supported the athlete, right? And by using Roy, fans not only support athletes financially, but they also become a part of their name, image, and likeness, NIL, journey, helping them succeed both on and off the field. So download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. So visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get the Roy app for iOS and Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Use referral code LOCKEDON for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. So visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. All right, welcome back. Last final segment here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. That new platform, Roy, I got to take another minute to talk about how great that is, I think. And there's always, people are like, well, complaining about this and that about NIL. Well, now this platform, honestly, it gives you a chance to kind of have a little bit of skin in that game, have a little bit of stake in that, so that, you can say, hey, I contributed to Diego Pavia, or, hey, I contributed to Gunnar Hansen or Glenn Seabrooks or whoever it is. It can be anybody. I to RJ Austin or whoever. So I think that's really, really cool. But, talking about Vandy, this road test here at Missouri, it's going to be, an interesting contest because, again, you have to deal with the road conditions, first of all, all the adversity that comes with traveling, sleeping in a hotel bed, riding on the airplane, taking buses everywhere, team meals in the conference rooms, walkthroughs. It's just an unnatural environment. You got fans screaming at you, people flicking you off on the bus ride over. You're in the stadium, the fans are roaring at you, all that stuff. All right. And on top of all that, now you get to look across the field and you get to see number 12, Brady Cook. You can see number 3, Luther Burden, number 1, Theo Wease, number 8, running back Noel, right? You get to see all of them line up against you, and you got to figure out a way how you're going to stop the stretch, how you're going to stop the deep shots, how you're going to stop the catch and runs, and how you're going to stop the quarterback from burning you and picking you apart. So there's a way. And as I mentioned before, that road is long, winding, and full of adversity. But there is a way. You have to overcome all that stuff, right? And the only way, I think, is you're gonna have to get Brady Cook out of rhythm. Okay. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this Vandy team early on, when I was watching the Virginia Tech game, I really loved how they played Kyron Drones. I really loved how they played him. Okay. Kyron Drones is a super, super talented quarterback on a team with a lot of returning experienced talent for Virginia Tech. And what Vandy was able to do early on, now he got into rhythm. He finally got into rhythm, and he was able to, but again, like against Georgia State, the momentum was too little too late for Virginia Tech, and they weren't able to sustain it. And Vandy had already kind of got that momentum and got that confidence building. Georgia State did the same. So what they need to do, they need to get him off his rhythm. So if that means blitz 5 or 6, play zero coverage, you're going to have to take some chances at some point, okay? Because whether you take those chances or not, Luther Burden's probably still going to burn you, okay? You might as well get a shot in or two on Brady Cook while you're at it, right? Legally, of course, okay? So you bring 5 or 6, you twist, you stunt, you show one side, come off the edge on the other side, whatever the case is. You got to put heat on Brady Cook. Okay. That's the most important thing. And thinking about it, I'm like, okay, there's different strategies, but what you can't do is sit back and rely on a 4-man rush at all times. You have to throw heat at the quarterback. Okay. And I get it. It's going to leave you vulnerable sometimes. It is. That's just part of it. Right. That's part of the deal. Unfortunately, that's the downside of it. And you can say what you want, but they did it against Virginia Tech and they came out with a win. Not saying that that's going to be guaranteed here, but you're giving yourself a chance, because if you don't, they have a pretty good offensive line and you're not going to really be able to get home with a 4-man rush. So you have to get him off his spot. You have to get him on the run. You have to get him throwing before he's ready. And that's because you've hit him. The more you hit a quarterback, the more they get happy feet, as I call it, and the more they release that ball before they want to. So the timing's all off. The rhythm's all off. He can't just catch 1, 2, 3 step throw or 1, 2, 3 fired out there to the flat. He's got to contend with it, right? And even if you don't get home, throw that big old paw up there, right? That's going to redirect some throws. That's going to – anything you can do to disrupt Brady Cook and get him rattled would be great. He rolls out. You got to put him down. Okay. If you get to him, you got to put him down. Okay. If you can get some sacks on him, you got to put him into the ground. Okay. And not in a dirty way, not in a drive him and your shoulder like you're planting him 10 feet under the ground, but you do have to knock him around a little bit, and you do have to bump him, knock him, don't let him follow through. Just things like that. Just like, as he throws, just kind of like tap him as you go by, things like that, little things like that. I think can get him off his rhythm. You have a better chance, because you're going to have to create some unforced errors. You're going to have to create some errant throws, things like that, because Luther Burden's going to be a difference. He's going to catch about 6 or 7 balls. He's going to go for over 100 yards, but you just got to make them earn it. You've got to make Missouri drive the football. Okay. That's the second leg of it. You got to get shots on Brady Cook, but you got to make them drive the football too, right? You got to make them earn their touchdowns. If they're going to beat the hell out of you, you got to make them earn it. Okay. You can't give up big chunk plays and give up four play drives. And next thing you know, the score's 28-0, just like that. Right. It's got to be 10, 12, 13 play drives, right? You've got to force them to earn it if they're going to score on you, because more likely than not, with an aggressive style of defense, you're going to get a big play in there somewhere. You're going to get a sack that takes them off schedule. You're going to get Brady Cook to make an errant throw. You're going to possibly jar a ball loose. You're going to get them in a situation to where their drive stalls. They have to punt it back to you. And then your offense obviously has to take control, and your offense is going to have to also be disciplined. The offense is going to also have to be disciplined enough to be able to drive the football, because that's what it's going to take. This offense is a drive the football type offense. And, as non-exciting as that seems, as long as it produces points, it's good. So defensively, if they can contain some of that stuff, I think that they have just as good a shot as anybody. But, Luther Burden's going to get his catches. All right. You got to limit his yards after the catch. You've got to contain him. You've got to allow him to have 8 catches, but for only 50 yards this time. Right. You have to limit his ability to make plays in the end zone. You have to play good technique on him. And if you get him rattled, again, players can get rattled. Bump him around a little bit, be a little bit physical with him, be a little bit rough with him, make him frustrate him. Right. And then clog run lanes, because they like to run off tackle. They like to run that outside zone off tackle. So clog those run lanes, make the running back have to redirect laterally. That slows him down for pursuit, and you're able to gobble them up. So these big, long, gashing runs can't happen. You've got to come off low. You got to come off hard. You've got to be moving on the defensive line, or you're just going to get blown out. So, but they have the work cut out for them nonetheless. But there's a way. And there's a way to success. There is a road to success, even though right now it's full of potholes and mountains and, falling rocks and snow and ice and any other obstacle you can think of. And it's probably the narrowest, windiest road you can think of as well. But it is a road, and it does lead somewhere. You just got to now traverse a bunch of adversity where it was a little bit smoother before last Saturday, if you can hang with my analogy. But that's where I'm going to leave you here today. Hope you have a great hump day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. We got a crossover with John Miller of Locked On Mizzou coming up at some point this week. So stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you later on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Peace out. Anchor down.